On this prequel episode, we've got our fan poll follow-up for The Jungle Book. We're learning about fan fiction and previewing 50 Shades of Grey. Hello and welcome back to This Film Is Lit podcast, where we talk about movies that are based on books. We have quite a bit to get into for this prequel episode, the first one before our summer series begins. So we're going to get right into it with our patron shoutouts.
I put up with you because your father and mother were our finest patrons, that's why.
We have one new patron this week at the $15 Academy Award winning level. Steve, or the guy that wants you to do Battlefield Earth. Thank you, Steve, or the guy that wants you to do Battlefield Earth. Appreciate you for supporting us at the $15 level. As a reminder, at the $15 level, you get to recommend something, but I have a feeling I know what your recommendation is. So, what your request is. Did he send the message yet?
Yes.
And I assume it's Battlefield Earth?
Yes.
All right.
Is that the one with
John Travolta.
cavemen flying fighter jets?
Yep, that is Cavemen Flying Fighter Jets.
That's literally all I remember about that.
Yes.
Well, I never watched the movie. I watched your episode about the movie.
Yeah, we did it on Good, Bad, or Bad, Bad way back in the beginning. It was like our 10th episode or something like that. And I think I knew it was a book at the time, but we obviously didn't talk about the book at all.
And we weren't doing the podcast at that time either.
Yes, we were not doing the podcast at the time. And I didn't read anything of the book, so... and I have not watched that movie since we just talked about it on Good, Bad, or Bad, Bad. But yeah, I wonder what that book is like. I guess we'll find out one of these days. But anyways, thank you, Steve, for supporting us at the $15 level. And the rest of our Academy Award-winning patrons are Steve, or that guy that wants you to do Battlefield Earth, Paul, Kat Insminger, Ben Wilcox, Jeff Niederhofer, Teresa Schwartz, Ian from Wine Country, no new name today, Winchester's Forever, Kelly Napier, Gray Hightower, Eli Youngs, Gratch, Just Gratch. Shelby says 50 Shades isn't what I meant by more fantasy, please. That darn Skag, V. Frank, Brendan Fraser is amazing on that one episode of Scrubs, and Alina Starkov. Thank you all very much for supporting us at the Academy Award winner level. Brendan Fraser is amazing in that one episode of Scrubs. One of the hardest hitting episodes of Scrubs there is. Do you remember that episode?
No.
He's in exactly one episode of Scrubs. He plays, I think her name's Jordan. Is that the character's name? The woman, Dr. Cox's ex-wife. I think her name's Jordan. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I watched Scrubs. But anyways, he plays her brother in one episode, and I won't spoil anything because there's there's some twists and turns in that episode, but it's one of the best, if not the best episode of Scrubs. It's up there. So, yeah, and he's great in it. Sorry, Shelby, that we answered your plea for more fantasy, but just not how you wanted. I assume, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite the fantasy you were looking for.
I guess it is fantasy.
Well, yeah.
In a sense.
She's using that in the other term of fantasy. Yes. Not quite the fantasy Shelby was looking for, but
not quite the fantasy I would have been looking for either.
Yes.
So.
No, fair enough. That is fair. But anyways, thank you all very much. It's time now to find out what people had to say about The Jungle Book.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Okay, so on Patreon, we had 3 votes for the movie, 1 for the book, and 1 listener who couldn't decide. Lost Remote Control said, the movie by default because I haven't read the stories, but I feel those haven't aged well. But really, all I actually remember is Baloo. But thanks for the Winnie the Pooh voice thing now. I can't unhear see Pooh as a snake.
It is really striking.
Yeah, once you realize it.
Yeah. And like I said, it's funny because I didn't put it together, but as soon as you said it, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's very clearly what that is. Yep.
Steve, or the guy that wants you to do Battlefield Earth, said, I think I have to go with the movie. The book is kind of dry, and let's be honest, Baloo is the most underrated Disney character of all time. Why isn't he as beloved as other characters is beyond me.
I mean, he's fine. I like him in the character. Like I said, he's based. I'm a fan of Baloo. I don't know about most underrated Disney character of all time. I hadn't thought about it, so I don't know if I have a retort ready.
I mean, there are definitely, like, more hyped Disney characters that I would probably prefer Baloo to.
Yeah.
Like Olaf, for example. No offense if you love Olaf, but
Wait, you compare him to Olaf?
no, I mean, like, I think there are characters that are like overrated that I would prefer, that like I would prefer Baloo to those characters.
Yes.
And Olaf
I see
is
what you're
one
saying.
such example.
Sorry, I see what you're saying now. I was a little confused at what you're... Yes. Yeah, I mean, sure, yeah. I'm indifferent on Olaf. I don't really care. But yeah, that's interesting. I can't think of another character that's underrated. Like I said, I'm sure I could, if I racked my brain for a few minutes, I could come up with a couple that I would put above Baloo. But he was probably my favorite part of the movie, so that's fair.
And our last comment on Patreon was from Tracy Drews, who said, "At first I didn't like the book, but now reflecting on it, I can't decide because I don't think I gave the book a fair chance. I kept trying to find the similarities since I have seen the movie so many times. I also didn't know it was separate short stories, so the format threw me off. One day I might give it another go."
Fair enough. I haven't read it, so I can't comment.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's something that I probably would have read if we weren't doing an episode on it.
Right.
Honestly.
Oh, yeah.
But like I said in the final verdict, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I necessarily like net overall enjoyed it.
Right.
But I enjoyed aspects of the book.
Also, you went in with low expectations, and
yes, I did.
That can be good for,
for being
a little pleasantly surprised.
A little pleasantly surprised. Over on Facebook, we had 1 vote for the movie and 2 for the book. Ian said, "I do love the movie. Musically speaking, it's one of my all-time favorite Disney films."
Wow. It's just interesting to me. I mean, everybody has different musical tastes, so fair enough. It just does. It's not one that I connect with a lot. There are some good songs in it.
There are some good songs in it, like
nothing that oh my goodness.
Overall, in the Disney canon, it's not one that stands out to me. But I also prefer the like Broadway style.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
like Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid.
That is
types.
Fair. I do too. Yeah, I definitely prefer the big soaring. Broadway
this is not really
musical.
Like there are musical numbers, but they're all kind of like disparate. And, there's several
different styles. And which is interesting and fun, but it's also you don't have Bare Necessities is definitely like the most memorable song, and I still wouldn't even put that in my top 10 Disney songs. I don't think.
Not personally. Ian went on to say, despite nearly wearing it out on VHS when it was re-released in cinemas back in 1990, was it?
Something like that.
It was
it was like 1990. That was when I in the prequel when Roger and Ebert and
that was
Siskel
when they
and Ebert
it.
when they talked about it. It was like 1990 or 1991 or something like that.
I still went to see it when I was in South Miami, and I honestly can't get enough of all Jungle Books, from the old black and white 1942 film with Cebu? I don't know. As Mowgli, to Disney's Stephen Sommers 94 live action one with Lena Headey.
Lena Headey's in that?
I don't know.
Is that the one I'm thinking of? The 94? Because that's the one I remember. But what does Lena Headey play? So continue there.
Which, since you like his Mummy film, you'll more than likely enjoy this version. It has many of the same hallmarks in it.
I think I mentioned that one in the prequel episode. I thought because I do remember watching that one as a kid and enjoying it, but I haven't seen it since I was a kid. What the heck? Because Jason Scott Lee plays Mowgli in that. Lena Headey plays Kitty, which maybe is like the love interest. Like maybe
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't remember anything about it. I remember that Carrie, because I mentioned that Carrie Elwes was in it, and Sam Neill and John Cleese. I did not notice that it was Stephen Sommers, though, which, there you go. That's interesting. But I'll have to go back and check that one out again, because like I said, I remember liking that as a kid, but I haven't seen it since I was a kid. So.
To the new live action one that came out recently, Kaa is definitely better in the book. If Baloo is a badass lawyer, then Kaa is the jungle historian that's not beyond killing every now and again. In many ways, he reminds me of Hannibal Lecter. Highly intelligent, valued for his knowledge, will possibly eat you. It's fair, fair. But I do love Trust in Me, such a beautiful song. Susie Sue and the Banshees do a wonderful, haunting, seductive cover of it. If it weren't for the song, I would have passed on Movie Ka. I get what you're saying about the movie's ending. To me, it's a bummer because it ends. I want more adventures. I want to see the odd couple, Bagheera and Baloo, get into scrapes in their return journey. Saying that, I have been and always will be a sucker for a pretty face, so I understand Mowgli following Shanti into the village. This is one of those where I might have voted both, but the Sherman songs push me for the movie.
Fair enough. That's, you know what? Fair enough.
You might want to watch that sucker for a pretty face thing. You get in trouble that way.
That is true. That is a good way to get in trouble. Absolutely.
On Twitter, we had 6 votes for the movie, 4 for the book, and 1 listener who couldn't decide. Kelly Napier said, I left this one up to the baby. I read her one of the stories and she fell asleep. I put on the movie and she watched it, giggling and babbling through the whole thing. So she voted for the movie and I cast her vote as her proxy because 3-month-olds don't have good Twitter skills.
Fair. I might argue, though, that the book did its job as well.
I was going to say, you might want to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
If we're ever struggling to go down for a nap.
So read some Rudyard.
Whip out the Jungle Book.
Yeah, I could definitely see a kid. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
I enjoyed this movie as a kid, and I didn't dislike it now.
Yeah.
I remember liking this movie quite a bit when I was younger, but just not as much as Lion King, Little Mermaid,
Right.
any
Well,
of the other
and I do
ones.
think, I think that's kind of where, the rub is for me watching it as an adult, because I think there are a lot of, the Disney, animated canon that I feel holds up as an adult, and for me, The Jungle Book is not one of them.
Yeah, it holds up. I would agree that it does feel to me it holds up less for me, and a big part of that is I don't have as much of a nostalgia for it as some of the other ones. You know,
Len Flakasinski said, when it comes to how to deal with aspects of the Jungle Book and older Disney that is incredibly racist in hindsight, I think Disney has handled at least this part of that well, which is putting the disclaimer over the front while still putting it out there for people to enjoy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it makes sense to put it out there and relatively unedited, unless it's something incredibly bad. You know what I mean? And just make sure you contextualize it and give it a place where people can discuss it and you know, it is what it is. I think it's handled relatively well. There might be ways to do it better, but I don't know what those would be off the top of my head. So.
Shelby says Monsters and Mayhem is out now. Shelby, the patron who requested the Jungle Book, said, this was my first time reading the Jungle Book, and I decided to read both volumes. Strangely enough, I think the movie nailed the long, slow periods between incidents that piqued my interest. I also liked how Disney really thought we wouldn't know the difference between African and Indian elephants.
To be fair, I know I'm aware there's a difference, but I don't know enough of it off the top of my head to.
I know what the difference is.
I know Asian elephants are bigger, right?
And African elephants are bigger. And Asian or Indian they have smaller ears. Yeah. Asian and Indian elephants do, and they have I don't know the right word for it. They have the shape of their head has a cleft almost.
No, I know what you're talking. It's got a
a name, and I don't know the name. I got zoo books as a kid, so I know all the differences between elephants.
It's something I forgot because I actually also got zoo books as a kid. I had a subscription to zoo books. I had a subscription to Missouri Conservation Magazine or whatever. I had all kinds of outdoor animal.
Did you get Ranger Rick?
I think that sounds familiar. I don't remember. I feel like I did.
I got Ranger Rick for ages.
Remember.
Anyway. Shelby went on to say, years ago, I watched the special features for the movie, and I still remember how very proud they were of that ending. Gag.
Oh, God.
What makes it worse is that in the final story in the book, Mowgli ends up returning to the village because he outlives a ton of his friends and feels left behind by the rest. He ends up visiting his mother figure from when he first went to the village and decides to stay because it's just time. It was a far stronger ending. I do have to mention that the girl from the movie technically is in that final story, but she's just walking by, which leads to Mowgli and his wolf sibling finding a more secluded place to talk. She's practically a major character in the movie in comparison. I agree about preferring Ka in the book, although I do have a soft spot for mean Winnie the Pooh.
Mean Winnie the Pooh.
There's a story involving Mowgli and Ka encountering a viper that was my favorite story in the whole collection. I always assumed it was common knowledge that Shere Khan was afraid of fire, because at the end the vultures just know and they tell Mowgli. I assumed that's why King Louie wanted to know about making fire, because he actually intended to help Mowgli in exchange for the knowledge.
Interesting.
He could have. We'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know. He didn't get a chance.
Nope.
Mowgli also didn't know how to make fire, so it wouldn't have worked out anyway.
No.
But also, Bare Necessities is the OG Hakuna Matata. The Friend song where the response to a big cat wanting to kill you is, "Have you tried not worrying about it?" as the meme goes.
I mean, you're not wrong. That is a very accurate...
That's an accurate assessment.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I never saw the draw of either song, but I will give the edge to Bare Necessities because it gets a bleak reprisal after Baloo is aware of the danger, and it cracked me up. I'm not sure I can choose with this one. I have so much nostalgia for the movie, and King Louie is the entire reason I have a soft spot for orangutans when I generally hate monkeys and apes.
Okay. Interesting.
I
mean, we all have animals we hate, I guess.
I will say I'm not overly fond of apes, but it's like an
uncanny valley.
Yeah, it's like an uncanny valley thing for me. It's
they're too close to humans.
It's too close to being human. It freaks me out a little.
I think they're fascinating. I love chimps.
I mean, I agree that they're fascinating.
Yeah.
I just don't particularly would want to be around them.
I mean, it depends on what you mean by around them. Like, I don't know if I'd want to like hang out in the jungle with them, because especially not wild ones, because and even ones in captivity, they can be very aggressive, and if they are not that they also can be very not aggressive and very tame and whatever, but if they are aggressive, they can cause a lot of damage because they're very strong. But I don't know. I don't find them. I find them really cool. Like, I like apes and chimps and all the monkeys and everything. I think they're really neat. But yeah, we all have our things. That you don't like birds, not you. But yeah, you kind of don't like birds, depending on the bird.
I think
you like some birds.
I like birds fine. I just think that we should show birds more respect than we do.
We should show all animals more respect than we do. That doesn't mean
they're
anything.
Dinosaurs.
That's true.
Shelby went on to say, not to mention, Shere Khan stole the show on rewatch. I liked some of the depth that came from the book, but I didn't care for all the time the author spent telling me how great he thought white people are.
Katie, that was Katie's favorite part of the book. She would not stop talking about how much she loved all the sections where Rudyard Kipling was like, "Let me tell you how great our race is."
It was pretty folded in. But seriously though, it's not, I think if you didn't know what to look for and you didn't know how to contextualize those stories, you probably wouldn't pick up on it, at least in the stuff that I read.
Okay.
The book's also very slow, and some stories don't even take place in the jungle. Lastly, I have watched and enjoyed both the 2016 remake and the Jungle Book too, but it's been a long time and I don't know how they hold up. Oh. I don't know about either of those. I will say, I find in general the straight-to-video sequels from the 2000s haven't held up for me.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
But I never saw that one, so who knows? On Instagram, we had 2 votes for the movie and 4 for the book. Abby messaged us and said, "Hi, longtime listener, first time writing in. I have enjoyed your past episodes, especially Dune with Aaron, a lot, but never had much to add, which you haven't already covered. But with the Jungle Book, I thought I could add a few points which might add some flavor to the discussion. The best version of the Jungle Book story is the 1989 Japanese animated version.
Didn't know that existed.
I didn't know that existed either. Which has 52 episodes, and I and many Indian children grew up watching it. It's a fantastic adaptation, much more interested in making a coherent story. I wonder if we can stream that anywhere.
Yeah, I wonder. And I wonder when it's 52 episodes, if it's like a TV show or if it's like shorts.
It sounds like a TV show.
It almost wouldn't surprise me if it was maybe like little short, like, I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
Regarding the snake character, Ka, you might want to take a peek into Indian mythology around various snake characters. there's the trope of the Nagini, a female shape-shifting spirit which takes a form of a cobra and seduces men. The Nagas, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing these correctly, tribe associated with the Serpent Kings is quite ubiquitous in the Indian mythology, but there aren't any prominent stories of the Indian rock pythons, which is what Ka is. Lastly, the term Banderlog. Of course, people are free to interpret the terms and their association in the way they experience it. In India, in the daily use, the term is often used differently than what can be read in the American or colonial context. The term implies noisy, mischievous rascals. Often you would see school teachers calling an unruly class of children Banderlog. How Kipling understood it, and how the modern, especially Western readers/viewers interpret it, is very much up to them.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And definitely, if this book had not been written by a white imperialist British guy,
Yeah.
it would be less likely to interpret his use of Banderlog in the way that I did.
Yeah.
But
That is very
yeah,
interesting.
but that is interesting.
So yeah, it looks like I just did some quick Googling, and it looks like the 1989 animated version is a 20 to 30 minute episodes
Nice.
TV show. And it looks like they maybe released a Christmas special episode in 2019. Maybe it's like a remaster or something. But the last thing on there, one was 2019 and one was 2020. The 2020 one said 30th anniversary or something.
Mhm.
But the 2019 one said Mowgli something Christmas something. Something Christmas star. And I was like, I wonder if they made a new one 30 years later, like a Christmas special. Maybe it was like a lost episode or something and they republished it, or I don't know. But yeah, it's got good reviews on IMDb. It has a 7.5 on for the fan vote, and it had the animation looked interesting. So anyways, yeah, go check out. I didn't look to see if you can stream it anywhere, which I'm doing right now. It is you can buy it on Amazon Prime for $83. All of the episodes. I wonder if it's on something like Crunchyroll or something.
Yeah, I could see it being on something like that.
Oh, it might just be on YouTube. It is just on YouTube.
Love that.
If you search The Jungle Book, The Adventures of Mowgli, the complete collection on YouTube, it looks like you can find it. And it looks like the entire thing is up in its entirety on YouTube. So
there you go.
Thank you, Avi. And thank everybody for all of your comments on The Jungle Book. Katie, how did the final votes break down?
The winner, by a much narrower margin than I thought, was the movie with 12 votes to the book's 11.
Wow.
I anticipated that people were going to disagree with me.
I would have assumed the movie would have just crushed.
Yeah. I was surprised that it was that close.
That's really
there
interesting.
were also 2 undecided votes.
I wonder if you swayed people.
Perhaps.
I don't know. I just because it's not something that I would have expected many people to have read.
Yeah.
First off, and then to also then pick the book over the movie, because it just assume that people would have the nostalgia and just the popularity of the movie. You would just assume that, I don't know.
I mean, and we definitely didn't get as many votes for this one as we sometimes do.
Right.
But
yes, yeah,
it's
still
very interesting.
That is pretty interesting. All right, normally we would go into our Learning Things segment here, but we're going to mix it up a little bit this week. And before we get to our Learning Things segments, we're going to set some groundwork by previewing 50 Shades of Grey, the book.
So this is just an interview for the newspaper. I just have a couple of questions.
Mr. Grey will see you now.
What was he like?
He was polite,
Intense, smart, really intimidating. Do you have any interests outside of work?
What about you? I'd like to know more about you.
There's really not much to know about me. Look at me.
I am.
All right, so like Brian said, I wanted to switch my segments around this week because I want you guys to have the context about the background of the book before we get to our Learning Things segment. So 50 Shades of Grey is a 2011, kind of, erotic romance novel by British author Erica Mitchell James, published under her pen name E.L. James. The novel is perhaps best known for its inclusion of the sexual practice of BDSM, a triple acronym that stands for bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, and sadism and masochism.
I've never heard the discipline applied to the first.
No?
No, I've only heard bondage, because I knew S&M was sadomasochism, and I guess I thought bondage. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've
it's
never
a
heard the
triple
discipline
acronym.
part, I guess. Interesting. Okay. Fair enough.
So 50 Shades began as a Twilight fanfiction series. It was posted on fanfiction.net starting in August of 2009. It was originally titled Master of the Universe. I'm really glad I caught you while you were sipping wine there.
Yeah.
And it was penned under the name Snow Queens, all one word, Ice Dragon, all one word.
You know, I've had some terrible screen names / usernames in my lifetime, so I have nothing to say about that screen name.
And that one is pretty par for the course for fanfiction.net, I will say. Snow Queen's Ice Dragon.
My PlayStation screen name is still Octavian Rage Quest, so anyways.
So it started out Twilight fanfiction. Following comments concerning the sexual nature of the material, James removed the story from fanfiction.net and published it on her own website, 50shades.com. Later, she rewrote the fanfic, scrubbing all references to Twilight in the technical sense, and removed it from her website. She then went on to publish the renamed 50 Shades of Grey with Writer's Coffee Shop, an independent Australian publisher.
Okay, so the original version had more overt references to the fact that this was Twilight.
I mean, it started out as just straight up Twilight fan fiction.
Oh, okay. So initially it was literally just the characters.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my understanding, I didn't realize that. I guess I thought that it was basically just thinly veiled, like the characters had different names and stuff, but I guess I knew that. No, I knew that it was basically okay. Anyways.
I mean, I say scrubbing all references to Twilight technically,
Right.
because my understanding of it is that she didn't really change very much.
Just like found and
Just
replaced
kind-
all the
yeah,
N-words
kind
with
of like
Christians and
found and replaced, the
Yeah.
names.
yeah, fair enough.
Is my understanding of it. Writer's Coffee Shop, the independent publisher that she initially went with, I think is now defunct. I couldn't find anything about, I couldn't find a website for it. I could find older articles and things about it, but I don't think they
I
exist
wonder if they
anymore.
would have. It's possible also that they just rebranded.
Yeah,
'Cause
maybe.
Writer's Coffee Shop's kind of a strange
As-
name
yeah.
for a publishing.
Well,
company.
what it is, my understanding of what it is or was that it was like I don't want to say crowdfunded because I don't think that's exactly the right word. It was like a cooperative effort of
okay.
a lot of different particularly fan fiction writers to try to break into more mainstream publishing.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But anyway, speaking of the Writer's Coffee Shop, they had a really restricted marketing budget, obviously, and relied largely on book blogs for early publicity. But sales of the novel were boosted by word of mouth recommendation. So this was a grassroots effort that got us 50 Shades of Grey.
Fantastic.
So the book's erotic nature and perceived demographic of its fan base, which was perceived as being composed mostly of married women over 30, led to the book being dubbed mommy porn. by some news agencies at the time.
I'm glad I missed out on that.
Oh, I
term.
remember that.
I mean, I remember them talking about the fact that it was like, the wine mom revolution or whatever, but like sexual revolution. But I don't remember hearing specifically the term mommy porn.
But the book has also reportedly been popular among teenage girls and college women.
As erotic literature
tends to be, yes. Although I'm not sure I love the idea of teenage girls reading this one.
No,
but
no.
But it does tend to be, yes. Due to high interest in the series, the license to the 50 Shades trilogy was picked up by Vintage Books for re-release in a new and revised edition in April of 2012. The attention that the series had garnered also helped spark a renewed interest in erotic literature in general. Many other erotic works became bestsellers following 50 Shades' success, while other popular works like Anne Rice's The Sleeping Beauty trilogy got reprints. And I believe, I don't have this in my notes, but I believe I saw somewhere that with that reprint, she was able to actually print it like under her name. Because she initially published the Sleeping Beauty trilogy under like a pen name.
Oh,
because it was
Anne Rice you're talking about. Gotcha.
Anne Rice.
Because it was outside of her typical brand or something.
Have you ever read any of the Sleeping Beauty trilogy?
No.
I've read a little bit of it, and it's a lot.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'd never even heard of it. I didn't.
50 Shades of Grey has topped bestseller lists around the world. In August of 2012, Amazon UK announced that it had sold more copies of 50 Shades of Grey than it had any individual book in the Harry Potter series. Although worldwide, the Harry Potter series sold more than 450 million copies compared to 50 Shades of Grey sales of 60 million copies. The series has been translated into 52 languages and set a record in the UK as the fastest selling paperback of all time.
Why the UK?
I guess because E.L. James is British.
Oh,
maybe
that is
they
right.
just
she is British, isn't she? For some reason, I
supported
just
their
assumed
own.
she was
I don't
American.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, having read some of it now, I feel like it's not an off assumption.
Well,
But-
anyways, yeah.
The novel received mixed to negative reviews.
You don't say.
Surprising no one, with most critics noting the poor literary quality of the work. Salman Rushdie.
Why was Salman... Okay.
I don't know.
Why is Salman Rushdie commenting on 50... Okay.
I don't know. But I included his quote because I thought it was funny.
Of course. Yeah. What?
He said, "I've never read anything so badly written that got published. It made Twilight look like War and Peace."
I'm glad Salman Rushdie dropping truth bombs out here.
Maureen Dowd described the book in the New York Times as being written, quote, like a Bronte devoid of talent, and said it was, quote, dull and poorly written. Jesse Kornbluth of the Huffington Post said, quote, as a reading experience, 50 Shades is a sad joke.
I'm over 100 and something pages in, and I cannot disagree with any of those assessments.
However, British author Jenny Colgan in The Guardian wrote, quote, it is jolly, eminently readable, and as sweet and safe as BDSM erotica can be without contravening the Trade Descriptions Act. The New Zealand Herald stated that the book, quote, will win no prizes for its prose, and that there are some exceedingly awful descriptions. Although it was also an easy read, quote, if you only can suspend your disbelief and your desire to, if you'll pardon the expression, slap the heroine for having so little self-respect, you might enjoy it.
Interesting. That has not been my problems with the heroine has not been my main issue with the book so far.
Certainly
Seems like a very
not.
strange critique of the little victim blamey, maybe. I don't know. Anyways.
But E.L. James laughed all the way to the bank.
No.
In 2013, Forbes named her the highest paid author in the world with $95 million in earnings, thanks to her massive book sales, and a 7-figure paycheck for the first movie adaptation. 50 Shades of Grey has also garnered criticism due to its depictions of BDSM, with some BDSM participants stating that the book confuses the practice with abuse and presents it as a pathology to be overcome, as well as showing incorrect and possibly dangerous BDSM techniques. Coinciding with the release of the book, injuries relating to BDSM and sex toy use spiked dramatically in America. In the year after the novel's publishing in 2012, injuries requiring emergency room visits increased by over 50% from 2010, the year before the book was published.
I assume it means like sex-related injuries requiring emergency room visits? Or
I assume so.
Because I don't know how you would correlate all emergency room visits to that.
I'm not saying that this is causation.
Okay.
But there's definitely correlation. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
It's speculated to be due to people unfamiliar with the proper use of these toys and the safe practice of bondage, etc.
Yeah.
Attempting to recreate what they had read.
Right.
But as you can imagine, practitioners of BDSM weren't the only people upset at its inclusion in the series. For example, Archbishop Dennis Schnurr, because we know the Catholics got a weigh in, said, quote, "The storyline is presented as a romance. However, the underlying theme is that bondage, dominance, and sadomasochism are normal and pleasurable."
Imagine critiquing it for all the wrong reasons.
Imagine being Catholic and your critique is that sadomasochism is presented as normal.
Right.
I was raised Catholic, so I can say that.
Oh.
It's funny. Anti-porn organization Stop Porn Culture called for a boycott of the movie because of its sex scenes involving bondage and violence.
Yep.
At the beginning of the media hype surrounding the book, Dr. Drew.
Noted huckster
Dr. Drew and sexologist Logan Levkoff. I don't know if sexologist is a real thing or not, to be honest.
It might be, maybe, but I have never heard of that person. But if he's chatting with Dr. Drew, he probably has very little credibility.
They discussed on the Today Show.
Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. They discussed on the Today Show whether the book perpetuated violence against women. Levkoff said that while it is an important subject, this trilogy had nothing to do with it. This was a book about a consensual relationship. I would have a lot of debate on that. Dr. Drew commented that the book was, quote, horribly written, in addition to being disturbing, but stated that, quote, if the book enhances women's real life sex lives and intimacy, so be it.
I mean,
sure.
It seems unlikely that would be the. Well, I don't want to say it seems unlikely. I think it could at least start you down a path towards exploring, new ways to enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think that it's, at least so far, more likely to cause issues romantically than it would be to improve things. But again, I don't know. I'm not done with the book yet.
And I am pleased to say that the only person whose comment on this series I wanted to hear did weigh in.
Yes.
Stephanie Meyer commented on the series, saying, quote, "That's really not my genre, not my thing. Good on her. She's doing well. That's great."
Oh my God. That's about what I expected, to be fair. Just nothing. Said nothing.
Stephanie Meyer.
Great job.
For all that I could criticize Stephanie Meyer for, she's in her own lane.
Yep. She's like, you know what?
You know what?
It's not.
I'm not even gonna get involved.
Good for her. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, that's a little bit about 50 Shades of Grey, the book. Now you have a little bit of context for the book. Let's talk about 50 Shades of Grey and fanfiction.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
All right, so let's talk about fan fiction real quick. A little history. I don't remember if we've ever talked about fan fiction on the show or not.
We at least once have.
I'm sure
mean,
it's come up,
but yeah.
I don't remember any specific instances off the cuff. So just to make our stance clear,
Well, sorry, I did think of one in relation to Anne Rice. We talked about her.
oh, we did talk about her.
We might have even done a segment.
No, our
Maybe it was just on Anne Rice. I don't remember, but
there was probably stuff about it in her, like, if we covered her in the bio information at all. The Learning Thing segment we did for Interview with the Vampire was about the evolution of the modern vampire.
oh, okay.
I remember that because I was really proud of that segment.
Yes, you're right. I do remember that now.
It was a good segment.
Yeah, but I know we definitely at least discussed her. It was probably during her
Yeah.
during the book thing about how she didn't.
Yeah,
like
no,
fan
we
fiction
definitely
stuff.
discussed how, and that actually comes up again in this segment.
Okay.
Anyway, I just want to make our stance clear. You will hear no fan fiction slander on this show. Maybe some light teasing or sarcasm.
Yeah.
But no slander or malice. I love fan fiction. It's something that I tend to engage with in waves. If I'm reading fanfic, I'm reading tons of it. But if I'm not in one of those waves, I don't really read it at all. But I've read a lot of fic and I've written a little bit. So fan fiction lovers, rest assured, I am in your corner.
I've only read a tiny bit in my lifetime. Never written any. Well, I mean, no. No, I've never. Trying to think. No, I've never written any. Unless you count like spoof videos, but which are kind of like fan fiction a little bit, but not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no problem with fanfic. I've read a little bit here and there, every now and then, but not it's not a thing I'm particularly into. It's a thing I like to tease now and then because it's, it's fun, but it's also something that I enjoy, and I appreciate that people enjoy it, and I have no problem with it.
So fanfiction has arguably been around for as long as stories have been around, depending on how exactly you define it. Storytelling began as an oral tradition, and stories moved around because people retold them, reimagined them, even reused characters and plots. That goes for folklore, fairy tales, and especially mythology. People loved hearing and telling new stories about their favorite gods and heroes. But the roots of modern fan fiction, right, fanfic as we would recognize it today, lie in the Star Trek fanzines of the 70s and 80s. Although some might argue The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which predates the Star Trek TV series, started the movement. But generally...
Or like people writing fanfic about that series?
Yeah, I think so,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But generally it's more credited to Star Trek fanzines because it was a much bigger, like, overall movement. The Harry Potter series is typically credited with launching modern fan fiction, with a big assist from sites like fanfiction.net and LiveJournal. You have Archive of Our Own in parentheses question mark
I
here.
was just wondering why you didn't reference that. Is that
because
isn't
it's
that,
not
like, the
it's not a
biggest-
thing yet.
Oh, okay.
I
thought
have a
it was
note on
around
it
that.
later.
Okay, sorry.
But it's not quite yet. Fanfiction.net predates Archive of Our Own.
Okay.
And I think LiveJournal might predate fanfiction.net, but don't quote me on that.
I think that sounds right in my head. I don't know.
So while many authors have found professional success following their success in writing and posting fanfiction online, such as romance author Racheline Maltese, erotica writer Cecilia Tan, and young adult author Cassandra Clare, having a fic directly republished as an independent work is a little more rare. I'm not going to call 50 Shades a trailblazer necessarily, but according to some sources I looked at, it did kick off like a slight period of publishers looking to fan fiction to find the next big hit.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me with
Yeah.
how successful it was.
Yeah.
That they would.
For example, a piece of supernatural fan fiction was republished in 2013 as Point Pleasant, and another piece of Twilight fan fiction retitled Gabriel's Inferno was republished in 2013. Interestingly, though, there's sometimes backlash within fandom communities when a fanfic author goes pro.
Of course there is.
In an article in Forbes, romance author Racheline Maltese, I hope I'm saying her name right. I'm saying it kind of French because I think that sounds good.
It looks French.
Racheline Maltese stated, quote, "Fan fiction is a gift culture. We don't make money doing that. Wow, I love this story is sort of how we get paid. When somebody goes professional, there's a sense of selling out. A counterpoint to this, I did read some articles saying that that kind of backlash is fading, and many fandom communities are now supportive of creators finding more mainstream success.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, as long as the fan fiction is, unique enough and stands alone enough that it's not like so derivative. You know what I mean? Like I see. Yeah, I think it's weird to be like, our success is, it's like, I can't eat. Wow, I love this story. So like, I don't know. Yeah.
But I think I've definitely seen like both of those kind of responses just out in the wild on the internet. So this is interesting. But some people speculate that that kind of backlash undercurrent within fandom culture may be due to how some authors react to having fiction written about their work. Anne Rice famously hated fan fiction, would threaten to sue fic authors. George R.R. Martin has said that he doesn't think fan fiction is a good exercise for aspiring authors, stating, quote, "I don't think it's a good way to train to be a professional writer when you're borrowing everybody else's world and characters. That's like riding a bike with training wheels."
So, I mean, I agree in the sense that it's not you. I disagree in the sense that I think you can hone some of your writing skills by writing fan fiction.
No, for sure.
Maybe not characterization and world building as much, because if you are literally just like kind of copy pasting characterization and world building from an established license, but the rest of it, your prose, your narrative structure, your thematic, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff.
Definitely that stuff for sure, but I think it also depends on what kind of fic you're writing, because there's a lot of like alternate universe fic.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Where you're essentially building a different world from scratch.
Yeah.
Anyway, so fan fiction has always kind of been the quote unquote redheaded stepchild of writing paths. The general vibe from people who don't or won't engage with it is kind of akin to George R.R. Martin's. It's not real writing, right? It's often considered a lower form of art for reasons like not being original, being of poor literary quality, and especially for objectionable material, which is usually sexual and or LGBTQIA plus content.
It's Pride Month. You're canceled. How did you get there?
Levitica.
Oh man.
Still, I think culturally we're at a turning point with general public opinion of what can be considered original art. Fan fiction and fandom culture in general has become far more mainstream over the past decade and a half, helped in large part by three main factors. One, technology, especially websites like AO3 and Tumblr, at least in its heyday. I don't know what's going on Tumblr right now. I haven't been on Tumblr in a hot minute. Two, juggernaut fandoms like Harry Potter, Supernatural, and Twilight, the kind of fandoms that just continue to churn out
Sherlock,
content.
how dare you leave out one of the other heavy hitters?
Okay. And three, fan fiction and fandom generally being considered progressively more normal with each passing generation. It was pretty normal for us millennials. I would wager to say even more normal for Gen Z.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what is after Gen Z? Gen Alpha?
I don't know what they're called.
I don't know. The names are all made up.
Yeah, I honestly don't think I've ever heard what post Gen Z is. But anyways, I think you're right. It might be Alpha.
I think it is Alpha. I was hoping to find some hard evidence that 50 Shades boosted the number of people seeking out fan fiction for the first time, but I didn't find anything definitive. It also hurt my research efforts that 50 Shades' rise in popularity also kind of dovetailed with the rise of AO3 as the new central hub for fic. I found some trends, but it's hard to say exactly what those trends originated from. I think it's probably fair to say that 50 Shades broadened awareness of fan fiction within the general population, especially within some older demographics that may not have been already engaging with it.
I think that's very fair, yeah.
But I think it's also debatable how much that helped within some demographics, especially considering that 50 Shades hits all three of those aforementioned common objections to fan fiction. It is derivative of poor literary quality and also contains sexual content.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Either way, if the world doesn't end or society doesn't collapse in the next decade or so, I think we'll probably be looking at some very interesting conversations surrounding copyright and fair use.
We already are, so
True.
I don't think it'll stop. That's absolutely true. All right. I have quite a few things to talk about 50 Shades of Grey, the film.
To what do you owe your success?
I exercise control in all things, Miss Steele.
It must be really boring.
I'm incapable of leaving you alone.
Then don't.
I had a rough start in life. You should steer clear of me. I don't do romance. My tastes are very singular. You wouldn't understand.
Enlighten me then.
50 Shades of Grey is a 2015 film directed by Sam Taylor Johnson, known for directing Nowhere Boy, A Million Little Pieces, and a fair number of high-profile music videos, including some for Elton John. Also want to mention here, just to get it out there, that Taylor Johnson began a relationship with Nowhere Boy actor Aaron Johnson, who played Quicksilver in something, I think. I could be wrong. Anyways, Aaron Taylor Johnson, after meeting on the 2009 set of the film that she directed, Nowhere Boy, he was 18, she was 42. So,
Okay.
yeah. They are now married and have 2 kids together, have been since 2009 or 2010. Take that information as you will. Just feels like a relevant thing.
It feels
maybe
a little contextually relevant,
Yep.
perhaps.
Anyways, the film was written by Kelly Marcel, who is known for writing Saving Mr. Banks, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and Cruella.
Well, this is an interesting. That's an interesting
Yep.
CV.
And at the time that she was chosen to write this movie, Saving Mr. Banks was literally the only thing,
Yeah.
like the only big film she
Yeah,
had
I was
written.
gonna say all
of
those other ones
post
are post
50 Shades,
this.
Yeah. Yep. The film stars Dakota Johnson, Jamie Dornan, Eloise Mumford, Jennifer Ailey? I don't know how to pronounce that. Marcia Gay Harden, Victor Rasek, Rita Ora, and Luke Grimes. The film has a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 46 on Metacritic, and a 4.1 out of 10 on IMDb. It made $569 million against a budget of $40 million and was nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Achievement in Music Written for Motion Picture, which was for the original song titled Earned It, which The Weeknd was involved with. I don't know. Some other people. There was like a list of several people, but The Weeknd was one of them. By early 2012, so getting back now into how this all came to be. By early 2012, several studios were vying for the rights to the series of novels. Warner Brothers, Sony Pictures, Paramount, Universal, and Mark Wahlberg's production company. This is how it was listed on IMDb. It didn't, or on Wikipedia where I got this information. It didn't say the name of his studio. It just said and Mark Wahlberg's studio, or production company, which cracked me up. All submitted bids for rights to the series. Ultimately, Universal and Focus Features secured rights in March of 2012. E.L. James was super eager to retain some level of creative control during the filming process and working on the films, and ended up being involved in hiring the Social Network producers Michael DeLuca and Daniela Brunetti, I believe is her name, to produce the film. Early on, Bret Easton Ellis, author of American Psycho, Rules of Attraction, The Informers, wanted to write the film, but E.L. James and the studio decided against it and ended up going with Kelly Marcel, then at the time, like I said, primarily known for Saving Mr. Banks and the TV show Terra Nova, which I believe was a Sci-Fi original, or no, I think it might have been on Fox, but it was like a sci-fi show. It was
Sounds like a sci-fi show.
My memory, it was like the post-apocalyptic, and there were like dinosaurs again or something, something like that. I never watched it, but I remember seeing like commercials for it way back in the day. And I think it was on like primetime or something on like network television. And then around that time, Patrick Marber and Mark Bomback were also brought in for uncredited script revisions. So Kelly Marcel's the only credited screenwriter, but a couple other people came in and did some work on the script. So the studio's original choice to direct the film was Joe Wright, who is somebody we have talked about before, who is most known for Pride and Prejudice, Atonement, Hannah, Pan, and The Darkest Hour, among other things, but he was unavailable due to scheduling. Other directors considered for the job included Patty Jenkins, Bill Condon, who we've talked about.
He did Hunger Games. Yeah.
Bill Condon was actually the director of 2 of the Twilight films, not the Hunger Games. He did Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2. So that makes even more sense, honestly, than the Hunger Games. Bennett Miller and Steven Soderbergh, which Steven Soderbergh, of all of those, makes the most sense to me, I think. But they all make sense in their own way. Ultimately, Taylor Johnson was chosen in June of 2013, and as she was working on the film and interviews afterwards, she cited 9.5 Weeks, Last Tango in Paris, and a film we've talked about, Blue is the Warmest Color, as inspirations for her work on the film. Taylor Johnson, though, would not go on to direct the rest of the series. Spoiler for our prequel episodes in the future. And in an interview in June of 2017, Taylor Johnson cited difficulties working with the author E.L. James, causing her to leave the series. She said, quote, "I can never say I regret it because that would just finish me off. With the benefit of hindsight, would I go through it again? Of course I wouldn't. I'd be mad." I have heard several times from different things that I've seen that E.L. James was a nightmare to work with on this film. So we'll see if I can find some more stories about that later. I don't have any more in these notes, but maybe in the future. So now for a tangled web of casting stories about this film. Apparently, according to Bret Easton Ellis, again, who wanted to write the film but didn't ever seem to be involved, but somehow he was at least involved enough to have some sort of insider information. E.L. James's first choice for Christian Grey was Robert Pattinson, which, like,
God.
What? What? Why? But ultimately, she decided that would be too weird.
That would have been really weird.
Yeah.
But, you know, the chaotic energy that he could have brought to the role.
I actually think it would have been great, but it would have been hilarious. And then if this Kristen Stewart was Anastasia, like, just do it. Cowards, come on. Would have been amazing. Anyways, on September 2nd, 2013, E.L. James revealed that Charlie Hunnam and Dakota Johnson had been cast as Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele, respectively. You may notice that is not who is in the film, so we'll get to that. The short list of other actresses considered for Anastasia included Alicia Vikander, Imogen Poots, Elizabeth Olsen, Shailene Woodley, and Felicity Jones, which is wild. And I mean, who's who there? I can't remember who Imogen Poots. The name is familiar, but I can't place her, like, who she is. But
isn't Shailene Woodley awfully young?
I have no idea. No, I think Shailene Woodley's I think she's like the same old as like Dakota Johnson, or same age as.
Oh, is she?
I could be. I don't know. Lucy Hale also auditioned for the film. I think most known for Pretty Little Liars.
Yeah.
Amelia Clarke was offered the role of Anastasia, but turned it down in part because of the nudity, which famously she stopped doing nudity in Game of Thrones after the first season. So the studio originally wanted Ryan Gosling for the role of Christian Grey.
Oh my God, that would have been so goofy.
Yes, it would have. He was not interested. This is one of my favorite things here. Garrett Hedlund also considered, but he could not connect with the character. Stephen Amell, who plays Green Arrow on like the CW series, I think. Yeah, I think that's Stephen, because there's brothers. There's Robbie and Stephen Amell. I think Stephen is the Green Arrow. Anyways,
I think you're right.
said he would not have wanted to play the role of Grey because, quote, I actually didn't find him to be that interesting. Nothing about Christian Grey really spoke to me, end quote.
Same.
So ultimately, there was some fan backlash to the casting of Charlie Hunnam as Christian. Charlie Hunnam probably most known for his role on Sons of Anarchy.
Right.
He's like the main character on that FX show. He's been in quite a few other things, but that's probably the thing he's most known, including Pacific Rim.
Especially at the time.
He was in Pacific Rim in 2013
yeah.
too. He was the main character in Pacific Rim. But so there was some fan backlash to the casting of Charlie Hunnam as Christian. And then on October 12th of 2013, Universal Pictures announced that Hunnam had exited the film due to conflicts with the schedule for filming Sons of Anarchy. Other actors that were considered as replacements for Charlie Hunnam included Alexander Skarsgård, Jamie Dornan, Christian Cook, Theo James, Francois Arnaud, Scott Eastwood, Luke Bracey, and Billy Magnuson. But ultimately, on October 23rd, 2013, it was announced that Jamie Dornan would be playing Christian Grey. Now getting into some interesting little tidbits here that I found. The film was the last project worked on by the prolific Academy Award-winning editor Anne V. Coates before her death in 2018. She was like in her 80s or something at the time.
Did this movie kill her?
Probably. Wouldn't be surprised. So, speaking of the editing and the film itself, there was initial speculation that this movie would receive an NC-17 rating in the U.S. A rating that is typically reserved for not pornography, but bordering on pornography.
Borderline pornography, yeah.
Yes. And studios typically steer away from NC-17 and adult-only ratings because nobody will go see them. Nobody can go see them. And some theater chains actually will refuse to show NC-17 movies, so it's not uncommon to just not be able to get them into a lot of theaters. So apparently, Kelly Marcel, the screenwriter, said she expected the film to be NC-17, and her initial drafts of the script would have put it at an NC-17 rating. But producer DeLuca anticipated that it would actually get an R rating. On January 5th of 2015, the MPAA gave the film an R rating, basing its decision on, quote, strong sexual content, including dialogue, some unusual behavior, and graphic nudity and language. Unusual behavior. Oh, boy.
Oh,
it's
my
hilarious.
God.
So, getting into some IMDb trivia here.
I'm sorry, hang on.
Yeah.
I'm going to start saying that about myself.
Unusual.
I'm going to say that I'm rated R for unusual behavior.
Fair enough.
Carry on.
Fair enough. Getting into some IMDb trivia here. So, again, take this all with a grain of salt. Supposedly, which this would make sense, which I think is the same thing for when we did The Handmaiden. Isn't that what it was called?
I think we did talk about this with The Handmaiden.
Remote control cameras were utilized for a majority of the sex scenes recordings so that the actors could have a more private set and didn't have like 1 million people there. Although stunt coordinator Melissa Stubbs said in an interview that in some of the wilder scenes, the two lead actors, Dornan and Johnson, had to spend hours naked in front of a film crew, a full film crew.
Oh, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah. So cinematographer Seamus McGarvey revealed that him and his team digitally added shots of visible pubic hair and that it was not real. Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan both wore modesty patches that were like, skin colored, which are often used in sex scenes to cover like, the actual genitalia. So they apparently added digital pubic hair, which is amazing. This is really wild to me. Apparently, supposedly, Angelina Jolie was offered the chance to direct this film, but declined.
I'm a surprising no one,
Yeah.
I feel like.
Actually, I could see her being in this film. It wouldn't have surprised me that if she would have done it, but I could also see her turning it down and being a little bit beneath her.
I was going to say, I feel like Angelina Jolie would read the book and be like,
yes, I would agree with that. I don't think she would oppose based on content, but instead based on quality.
Yeah.
So, controversially, Jamie Dornan revealed that he wouldn't be doing full frontal nudity for the film,
Absurd.
stating that there were, in fact, signed contracts in place to make sure that his penis did not appear in the film. And apparently this raised concerns for fans of the book as they feared that the filmmakers had toned down the explicit and graphic nature of the sex scenes in the book. So no dong in this one, which disappointing. My notes are already too long, so I'm going to stop here. I have so many things I could have, and our notes were already very long. But I'd like to end by saying that a large amount of the IMDb trivia page is just people pointing out different ways that the BDSM depictions in the film are bad. And inaccurate and harmful. So I was like, half the ones I scrolled through was like, the scene where this happens, that's bad because of the. I was like, all right. I mean, I don't disagree. It's just funny that that's like half the IMDb trivia facts. So, getting to some reviews of the 50 Shades of Grey film. Claudia Puig of USA Today wrote that, quote, the dialogue is laughable, the pacing is sluggish, and the performances are one note. Moira McDonald of the Seattle Times wrote, 50 Shades of Grey, the movie, for the record, is not quite as bad as 50 Shades of Grey, the book, but that's not saying much.
Oh, Moira, we'll be the judge of that.
I was going to say, I feel like that's probably going to be our review if I had to guess going into
yeah,
this.
if I had to guess.
If I had to put money down, that would be my where I would put my money down. We got this covered critic, Isaac Feldberg, gave the film 1.5 stars out of 5 and wrote, quote, it feels like two distinct films grappling for dominance over the screen. One, a sensual and stylish romance, and the other, a numbingly explicit Harlequin bodice ripper brought to life. Regrettably, the latter and lesser of the two ends up on top.
Okay, Isaac, I'm going to need you to leave Harlequin bodice rippers out of this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So there, I will say, Isaac, well done on some clever wordplay in your review there, though. And then in a positive review, a couple positive reviews here, or at least one. In the Daily Telegraph, Robbie Collin called the film, quote, sexy, funny, and self-aware in every way the original book isn't. We'll be the judge of that. Elizabeth Weitzman of New York's Daily News praised the directing, the screenplay, and Dakota Johnson's performance, but called Dornan's performance the chemistry between the two leads and the supporting cast underused. She praised
they didn't show his dong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Underused.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So she praised the film for honoring the essence of its source and the director's way of balancing, quote, atmosphere with action. And then finally, in The Guardian, Jordan Hoffman awarded the film 3 out of 5 stars, writing, quote, this big screen adaptation still manages to be about people and even a little bit sweet. And that the sex scenes, quote, are there to advance the plot and only the most buttoned up prude will be scandalized. That's Jordan Hoffman's opinion. I mean, okay. I mean, you go into the movie knowing what you're getting. It's not like it's not like you're gonna stumble into this film surprised by what you're seeing on. You know what I mean? Like it's.
I thought this was gonna be about paint.
Yeah, like I mean, I guess I agree in the sense that if you're scandalized watching this movie, what did you think you were watching? Like, yeah. Before we get to where you can watch it, we want to remind you can do us a giant favor by supporting us on Patreon for a few bucks a month. You get access to bonus content and all that kind of stuff. We just watched The Mummy, 1999's The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, among others. And we will be recording an episode on that here in just a day or two, and it will be out within a week or two of when you're listening to this. So look out for that. And that's what you get access to on Patreon at the $5 and up level. You can also do us a giant favor by following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, all those places. Look for This Film Is Lit. Follow us and interact. We love to hear from you. Katie, where can people watch 50 Shades of Grey?
Well, you can check with your local library. Our local library does not carry this film.
Prudes. Buttoned up prudes.
Yeah, well, you can get the book in any format your heart desires, but they don't have the film.
Oh, okay.
Or if you still have a local video rental store, you can check with them. You can stream this movie with ads through the Roku channel.
Yeah, I saw that. It's interesting.
Or you can rent it for around $3 to $4 through Apple TV, Amazon, YouTube, Vudu, Redbox, DirecTV, AMC Theaters on Demand, or Spectrum TV.
There you go. Those are all the places you can check out 50 Shades of Grey. I am interested to see how this movie compares to the book because, boy, the book is as bad as...
the book is... You know
I
what?
was expecting.
It's worse than I was expecting.
You know what? I said that, and then as soon as I said it, I thought the same thing. It's actually worse than I was expecting.
I was fully expecting it to be very, very terrible, and I am still aghast.
Yeah, it really is not good. It's not well written. It's got lots.
It's got a lot of not great messaging.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, and we'll get into it. There's some nuance to be had in the discussion of the topic, and like in the discussion of fantasy and romance and erotica and all that sort of stuff.
It's gonna be a very interesting series, I think, because there are many layers to this discussion. Yeah, and we want to make sure that we are being as fair as possible.
Absolutely,
but we also want to discuss different aspects of this piece of content
for sure, because there's a lot to talk about, and it is many layered, many faceted, and slightly nuanced. That being said, it's also just a terrible book, but it is
it's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. But there's a lot to dig into and discuss here, so I'm excited to do that, which we'll be doing in 1 week's time. So come back then, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, in 1 week's time, talking about 50 Shades of Grey. Until that time,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.